grows and every conversation brings us closer to a healthier mind. And today I have my special guest, service driven social worker, therapist, coach with 25 years of clinical experience, and of course, trauma recovery expert, no other than Miss Karen Robinson. Welcome once again, Miss Karen, to one of my podcasts. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Sure. Well, first of all, Daniel, thank you for hosting me on your podcast today. You've mentioned that I'm a therapist. I'm on year 28 being a therapist in the mental health field. And since that time, I've earned multiple certifications in all types of different holistic healing modalities so I can be of service for clients that are in major distress. Whew. All that
Oh,
time in the field, I have worked in hospitals, outpatient clinics. I've worked with people from all ages, all backgrounds, all religions, and I really do enjoy being a service driven social worker.
yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Karen. Thank you. So today let's talk about mental health awareness for women. You often speak about power of authenticity and healing. Was there a specific rock bottom moment in our own trauma recovery where you realize that your pain could become the foundation of your life's work?
Are you asking from my own personal experience or professional experience working with clients?
Can you do have both, please?
Yeah, sure. So, for my own personal experience, I grew up in a home that was dysfunctional. We were below the poverty line, and there was abuse and trauma in my childhood home. So, as a young pre teenager, I had a suicide attempt just because I was so depressed with my living arrangement and just feeling hopeless and trapped. And when that didn't work out, when the suicide attempt wasn't successful, it made me kind of question like what my purpose is and is there something that I could do with my life based on what I was going through. And so I tried to just focus on school and then a couple years later I did run away from home and when I lived with my aunt and uncle, I was able to even thrive in my school. I was able to work and earn my own money. And so that was like my personal journey is, getting past the depression, the anxiety, the symptoms of trauma, the food insecurity. It was, a lot to get through. And so in my professional world, when I see clients that are really suffering with depression, anxiety, and they happen to be trauma survivors as well, they tend to have sleep difficulties. They tend to abuse some sort of substance or abuse food, or maybe it's, spending inappropriately. They have issues with money and finances or pornography. Like there's all these things that happen when you're anxious or depressed, right? When you don't feel safe, either in your body or in your environment, we tend to have these what I call acting out behaviors, or we do things that sabotage our success. So that's kind of what people's rock bottom is when they're not sleeping, they're not functioning at their job, and they're really struggling to be in relationship with others. They simply don't trust others because they can't trust themselves.
Well said, Miss Karen. Before becoming a therapist and coach, you were a woman navigating your own unhealed trauma. What was the biggest misconception you had about being healed before you started your professional journey?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think one of the misconceptions is I should just, get over it. There's some people that have it much worse than me. And if we look around, there is always going to be somebody that has a harder story than what you may have, but there's also people with easier stories. And as a general rule, it's not a great idea to compare our healing with other people's, unless other people kind of inspire our journey. So the misconception, I think, is, oh, I should just get over it because other people have it worse than me. Like if you have wounds, it's really important to take that time to work on your healing.
Yes, definitely. You work as a unique blend of clinical expertise and personal survivor experience. How do you navigate the intersection of these two worlds? And when do you intentionally lean on one more than the other?
Yeah. Yeah, because one of my own trauma symptoms is trying to people please and overdoing, overworking. So if I wasn't, in my past, I did a lot more overeating and I'm doing better with that. But now I still tend to work a little more than I should. It's difficult for me to take breaks. And as you probably know, as an entrepreneur with the podcast, there's always more to do. Our to-do lists, they tend to be kind of long. So what I am leaning in and working on is holistic healing for myself through travel. So I've added to my business model hosting healing retreats for people. And because of that work that I'm doing, taking people on trips and working on the different modalities for healing, I myself go on healing retreats too. So I can experience myself and then I can see, ooh, that's really helpful. Like, oh, that retreat, we did a little too much work and not enough relaxation. So I'm learning what works for me, what doesn't work, like what type of art to do, what type of journaling to do, how much exercise should be included, how much meditation and yoga, trying to get a good feel on what's comfortable for people, especially if they're not feeling well, either mentally or physically, trying to have that a little bit of exposure to different activities without overdoing it.
That'd be amazing. Miss Karen, you emphasize the mind body connection, particularly how emotion manifests as the physical pain. If our bodies could speak, what is the most common silent scream you hear from the women who come to you?
Yeah, the when we carry so much trauma and trapped emotions in our body, it can really literally make us physically sick. And there's lots of research proven that now that a lot of medical or physical health complaints are because of people's mental health and because of their trauma histories, right? So when we work on healing one part of our life, it tends to help all the parts of our lives. And so that's why taking care of our emotional health is huge. It can literally save your life. People that have a lot of emotions trapped in their body that impacts your mobility, that can impact your heart disease, your blood pressure. It can impact your immunity. You can catch a lot of illnesses more quickly if you have a lot of trauma or mental health distress. And a lot of my clients have autoimmune disorders, like really rare issues because of the stored stuck emotions in their body. It can impact your gastrointestinal, your nervous system. You can have chronic headaches. The mobility piece, because of the tension of your muscles and the hard um, work of your joints with all this distress. So it's really, really important to learn how to manage your emotions. And that does not mean not feeling them. Like we sometimes think, oh, I shouldn't feel because it's going to lead to these things. It's actually the opposite. Allowing yourself to feel and release helps it come out of your body. So doing things like journaling, telling people how you're feeling, the movement, talking about your stress while your movement can be healing. You're doing creative projects that get you out of that think, and just being in the moment, learning to ground yourself. All of that helps with that stuck emotion in your body.
Well
You'll,
said, Miss Karen. Very well said indeed. The concept of linear healing is a myth you actively dismantle. What does a bad day on the healing journey look like for someone 5 years in the process? And how should you yourself compassion in that moment?
yeah, I love this question. Most of our healing journey is up and down like a wave, but there are times where we have this homeostasis and we're on a good trajectory and we're doing okay. We're in that window of tolerance where our nervous system is regulating. And then a bump will happen. And the bump is some sort of trigger. And the trigger could be like a loss of a job or someone we care about passes away. Or someone just really hurts us. Maybe it's an infidelity or someone just really hurt our feelings in some way and we kind of do a nosedive, right? And so that's why it's really important to think about your journey as just that. When we're on journeys in life, there's always going to be bumps in the road. And sometimes those bumps are big ditches. And sometimes we're on top of the mountain and we're thriving, or sometimes we get over a hill. And the reason the compassion and the grace for yourself is critical, because if you're in the ditch, if you start beating yourself up, it's really hard to get out of that ditch. Okay. Being hard on ourselves generally is not helpful, because if it was helpful, I would say, yeah, keep beating yourself up because it's making you do better. But we already know that our mind doesn't do well with that. Our body doesn't do well with that. We get to feel defeated. We get sick. Our soul hurts. We tend to isolate. We tend to not sleep well, not eat well. So the grace and compassion, like if we say to ourselves, yeah, I really am hurting right now. And it's okay to be hurting because of what I've experienced is real. And now that I'm hurting, I'm going to be extra kind to myself so I can encourage myself and have that hope, that faith that I will get better again. And part of that is being okay with asking for help, going to support groups, joining communities with people that lift you up. All of that is really important. So lots of grace and compassion.
Hmm. Compassion indeed, compassion. For a woman who was silenced in childhood, finding her voice can feel physically impossible. What is the first tiny, manageable step you can give her to start breaking the silence?
Oh, yeah, beautiful question. In fact, I have a summit coming up in May. It's called Finding Your Voice After Trauma, right? So it is a thing. And what's interesting is a lot of times it's an emotional problem where women don't want to use their voice because they don't feel safe. But sometimes it actually is a physical problem. I've had women, and I myself have been diagnosed with what's called vocal cord disorder, and it is related to trauma. But other people talk about their throat chakra. Like when I get them to work on affirmations to encourage themselves, they'll literally choke on their words. Like their body is fighting. Their body is saying, "You don't believe that, so why are you saying that?" Right? So it's looking at that subconscious, like how we think and feel about ourselves really impacts our voice. That's a big part of it. The other part of it is if you grew up in a home where there was a lot of trauma, we learned from an early age it is not safe to use our voice. So if you speak up to a parent that's raging, or a parent that's maybe abusing drugs, alcohol, or there's domestic violence in the home, or child abuse in the home, you learn really early, hey, I need to be small. I need to stay I need to hide. I need to be invisible because then there's less risk of harm. Now, the problem is as you grow up into adulthood, that stays in your subconscious if you don't work on healing it. So, working on healing that is doing voice exercises. I tell my clients, pretend you're on a ship and you're the captain or the admiral of the ship, and you have to get a message to the other side of it, right? And so it's using your posture, learning to project your voice, and claiming the healing words like I am enough. my voice matters, and practicing that over and over, even if you don't believe it at first, that's really okay. Because if you already believed it, you wouldn't have to do these exercises, right? So the practice of your exercising, you're training your brain and your body that you want to believe these things about yourself. And then over time, it will gradually happen. You'll reprogram your brain to believe, oh, yeah, it's true. My voice matters. So it's exercises like that. But I also encourage my clients to do a lot of writing because the writing is soothing. The writing gives them clarity. It helps them get to a deeper level in their healing. And through the writing, they can tell those painful stories and get that out of their body, and then they can choose to share it. Like I have a journaling club. I'm one of the owners of it. And myself and the co-owner, we give feedback after people read what they wrote. We give feedback that's encouraging and uplifting, and doing those type of exercises, shows clients that, oh, this is a safe place to share. I am okay here, right? And so the important pieces of sharing your voice is feeling physically and emotionally safe. So if you are living in an abusive environment, you're not going to feel safe. It's impossible. So you have to first get rid of you have to move on. So if you're in a relationship with someone that's hurting you, you've got to get out of there, or it's impossible to feel safe. It doesn't make any sense. So once you're living in a safe home, then you can work on regulating and feeling emotionally safe again. So I hope I answered your question the way you wanted me to.
Definitely. Let it go and move on, people. You advocate for living according to one's own values, not society's. What's the loudest societal message about how women should be they you wish you could permanently silence?
Yeah, women get a lot of messages, and sometimes men too. But the message is we really should people please. That's women have the message that they should always be serving, right? And serving can be beautiful when you're with people who value you, they respect you, and they also serve you too. That's like lifting each other up. But when you're in environments where you have like a lot of people's spirituality, their religious backgrounds is there's this thing about not divorcing. Well, the God I serve doesn't want me to be with a partner that's hurting me, right? So sure, it's a great message to work on your relationships and try to stick marriage out because it's a commitment, but the rules have been broken. If your partner's hitting you or hurting you emotionally or manipulating you, that's breaking all the rules. They're breaking their covenant of a healthy marriage. And if they will not stop, then it's my belief, personally and professionally and spiritually, that you get out of that relationship.
Very well said, Miss Karen. Boundaries are cornerstone of your teaching. For a woman who has spent her entire life as a people pleaser and word no can feel like a foreign language, how do you teach her to become fluent?
Fluent in the language of safety and emotional healing.
Yes, by saying no,
Right.
please.
Well, yeah, exactly. That goes to the work I do on boundary setting, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes people think, oh, the word boundary is negative because it means saying no to people or advocating for yourself. But the truth is, when you do that, you're doing that so the other person can have a path to follow too. Like when people break our boundaries, sometimes it's because they don't know what to do. And when we set a boundary to say, look, I am available to assist you from this time to this time, or I am willing to do this, but I'm not willing to do that, then people are willing to work with us, in that way. And then if they're not, that really is their problem. That is not your problem, right? Because if we've been serving, 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 doing, giving, 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 yeah, some people are going to be like, ooh, what's wrong? Right. So
Mhm.
let's say, um, you know, a lot of the examples we've used is, men hurting women, but let's turn the tables because, there are some men that are married to abusive wives, right? So let's say you're a man and your wife is like, every week you should be buying me flowers and you need to buy me jewelry once a month and you need to wash my car and do this, this, and this, and this. And she's not doing anything, so he's working, he's taking care of the kids, and she's acts like she's royalty in the home. This is like a silly
Mhm.
example, maybe. I would encourage the man, if I was working with him, to say, no, this is what I'm willing to do, and this is what I'm not willing to do, right? So the example, like, I can't buy you expensive jewelry every paycheck because we have bills. So as a good partner to you, it's important for both of us, I pay the bills first, right? That would be a
Mhm.
boundary.
Miss Karen, you create tools like journals and understanding you curriculum. If a woman only has 5 minutes a day for herself, what is the single most impactful question she can ask herself in that time?
Ooh, a
Mm.
lot of things popped up for that, but I think a helpful question is asking yourself, what if my next step was easy? If I made it easy, what would that look like? You know? Because sometimes we overthink and overdo, or we worry there's too much to do. And sometimes the easy thing is just taking a few very deep breaths, learning to kind of calm ourselves. So I like the question, what if it were easy?
Awesome. So, what is the most common dream you see women reclaiming once they release the weight of their trauma? Is it career focus or relational or something else?
Mm. That's a tough question. It's very individual on the woman, but I think the most common, because we all thrive in community, and even though we get hurt in relationships, we also heal in relationships. So oftentimes for women specifically, putting them in a healing community where they can uplift each other tends to be very effective. It gives them hope and faith, because they can support each other. And I have a membership like that for women too.
So, Miss Karen, to wrap up our discussion for today, this work is incredibly heavy. As you hold the space for so much pain, what is your personal non negotiable ritual for filing your own cap and protecting your own peace?
Yes. So for me, I do what's called holistic healing practices, and I have like six or so that I do. They're writing in my journal, meditating, movement, and being connected to my higher power through devotional reading and prayer.
Very well said, Miss Karen. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your coaching, your business, or whatever you want to promote on Mental Health 101?
I would ask listeners to be on the lookout for my book coming out soon called Therapists on Fire: Healing the Guilt, Pain, and Shame of Trauma. It's going to be released on Amazon in May 2026.
Well, looking forward for that, Miss Karen. And please do come over on Book 101 Review, Abstract Essay, and let's talk about the book itself. So, I have one more question. Looking at the next generation of a young woman grappling with the unique pressure from social media and polarized world, what is the most crucial piece of mental health advice you would offer them?
Practice deep breathing because that resets your mental space when you're overthinking or struggling.
Mm, right. what? It's a good advice, Miss Karen. And breathing itself. So, Miss Karen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel, for hosting me today.
Modikan people, see you soon.